I don't know why DC Comics insists on daring its customers to just walk away, letting them know that all the time and money they've invested in the DC Comics universe, the 80 years of history along with DC Comics, are just meaningless at this point. Today, like, they finally took it to the next level. Multiverses are a cool concept. I like Elseworld stories, but DC Comics insists on trying to answer questions that readers, quite frankly, don't have. I don't care why Batman hasn't aged as much as he should have in the past 80 years. It's just not a big concern to me. And I continue to buy comic books. I don't need that answered for me. Also, with Elseworld stories, I get it. It's a what-if story. It's the characters that we know and love in familiar settings, but things are changed quite a bit. What if the Joker was even more insane than we thought and he ended up torturing Commissioner Gordon and paralyzing his daughter? Now, of course, they got to incorporate that into continuity and really screw up the Elseworlds concept. And this week, they've decided to just blow up the DC Comics universe and let everyone, DC Comics readers, you and I, the people that have invested our time and money into the universe, know that we've just wasted massive amounts of time. I'm so frustrated with this. Flashpoint Beyond #5. Jeff Johns, the best DC Comics writer of his generation. Perhaps one of the top 5 or 6 DC Comics writers of all times. One of the few people they still have on the payroll that doesn't screw up royally every single issue. Now, he is being co-written with Tim Sheridan and Jeremy Adams. Tim Sheridan is notoriously bad comic book writer. Jeremy Adams is actually pretty good. So I imagine they're the guys like writing the dialogue, but this is Jeff Johns' story. His name's on the marquee when it comes to Flashpoint Beyond. And beyond that, no pun intended, they decided to release the identity of the Joker in the story. They're actively going out there and trying to ruin the things that make the universe itself cool. I'm so frustrated. I've got to share this with you because I'm so pissed off. This particular comic book issue, the story in it takes place the day after Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths is over and they're victorious. I know that the heroes are going to win in the end, but do we have to have a comic book issue that takes place after the victory? It all but confirming everything that's going to happen? It's just so frustrating. And after Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths and Pariah is defeated, Mr. Terrific goes on national television with people from the Time Variant Authority to explain the Omniverse and hypertime. And my goodness, are your eyes going to roll? And I think your faces are going to be as red as mine when I'm done explaining this to you. Mr. Terrific says, the simplest way to define it, being the Dark Army, Mischin, is an ancient living corruption that can infect and control sentient life. When it was unleashed, the Omniverse, as we know it, was nearly destroyed. Again, not that this latest disaster directly affected our Earth. Instead, the Omniverse outside of our universe seems to have been altered. Miss Chin asked, and the Omniverse itself is defined as, and this is going to be a doozy once we get through all of it, Mr. Terrific, the Omniverse is the totality of all the parallel worlds and the multiverses that contain them. The Omniverse is everything and everything that matters. And the Time Variant Authority lady laughs at him and explains, with all due respect, the Omniverse is hardly everything. Yes, it has been at the center of the exhaustive crises that have threatened us, perpetrated by great evils of this dark age. Yes, it's all great and bombastic, but it's not everything. There are more important matters to all this than infinite numbers of Earths or how many multiverses there are. You see, the truth is, everything only matters when it matters in our hearts.
I fell asleep.
You fell asleep?
When you read dialogue like that, you almost go into a seizure. I'm assuming that there itself is Tim Sheridan, but we have Mr. Terrific trying to explain what the Omniverse is, and then we get this explanation that essentially tears apart the fabric of the DC Comics universe. Every comic book you've ever read is meaningless. After she says, let me explain, when you're referring to the Omniverse, you're referring to all of space, but not the other half of existence, time. The Omniverse has been disrupted and transformed on a handful of occasions, but afterward it stabilizes, including the metaverse, which is our universe and the one from which all multiverses were born. At its core, the Omniverse and its multiverses are conceptual in nature, while hypertime is emotional. That's right, folks. The lady from the Time Variant Authority just claimed that time is emotion. Here's the real damning part of the story. Like, this just destroys everything. Therefore, hypertime is never stagnant because it reacts and changes with us, perpetually growing and splintering off into an endless number of timelines. At every major personal crossroads, a choice is made, and it is at those times of great importance that the timeline can split. When that happens, new timelines are born within hypertime, and unlike parallel Earths that come and go like a Tinder date, these alternative timelines exist forever. So while you might have enjoyed that Superman story where he caught the kid that was falling and saved his life, in another timeline, he had a choice and he was hungry for ice cream. And he did about base. He walked the other way and the kid splatted on the ground and died. It is so stupid and counterproductive to even include this within the comic book itself, trying to explain what the Omniverse is and what hypertime is, basically answering questions that no one ever really asked. And in so doing, have said, you remember that time when Bane showed up and Batman was literally trying to run down every single villain in all of Gotham, and in so had his back broken and had to relearn what being a hero is and learning to trust Dick Grayson again, like all those things that you love. There's a timeline where Batman said, God damn it, I'm really tired, man. All those people can die. That is what they have introduced in here. Now, why would they do that? My assumption always is that money has something to do with it, right? Money is the root of all evil. Stupid mistakes like this normally have some type of financial incentive about them. But when I look at what's doing here, there's no money to be made by destroying the history of DC Comics and all the characters. I think they're literally doing this because they're writing such shitty stories that they're giving this new wave of terrible creators like an out to say, you know what? In another timeline, the hero really is a hero, but in this one, he just happens to not be. Like, I think it's just all excuse making for all the terrible stories that they have. But everything that we've read to this point, all the stories that you've loved, they never truly existed. How insanely stupid do DC Comics, Jim Lee, Marie Javins, Jeff Johns, and everyone associated with this comic book have to be? David Zaslav cannot come over and take a look at these dipshits soon enough. And to make it worse, in this issue, they decided to identify who the Joker is. The Joker is the greatest villain in comic book history for a reason. We should never know his name, but we do now. Turns out Flashpoint Joker, Martha Wayne, somehow saved herself in time and learned how to time travel and found a time traveler that knew the identity of the real Joker on Earth Prime, and his name is Jack Oswald. In this world, Mr. White was a failed comedian with a wife and child, stuck in a menial job cleaning bathrooms at the Wayne Casino. No one ever needed to know the name of Joker. He never should have had a name. The character has like 9 different origin stories, and all of them make sense because he's the Joker. Why would you want to lift the veil off this and put a name to something that no one needed to know? Now you're removing the mystique and lore of who the Joker is, and invariably Jack Oswald White will come up in modern continuity now. We're gonna oh, that's the Joker. Why would you even do that? And then there's another page. This absolutely chapped my ass. Mr. Terrific asked the Time Variant Authority scientist, and how do you know all this, Dr. Baxter? And she says, I've heard you humbly declare yourself the 3rd smartest man on the planet, Mr. Terrific. I'm the smartest woman. What does that add to the story? It just makes the character annoying. It makes a bad story even worse. Like, why is that even there? Tim Sheridan, I know that was you. The story was working in spite of you up until now, and it kind of just falls apart. Why are you destroying the fabric of the universe? Why are you telling the readers that have a favorite hero in the DC Comics universe that hero isn't special and that there's 50 billion different versions of them and 50 billion different timelines existing all at the same time? There's nothing special about Superman because in half the other timelines, he ends up being a villain. None of this actually matters. It's the most insanely stupid thing I've ever seen in a comic book put out by DC. They've somehow made their continuity more convoluted and meaningless at the same time. Just shocking stuff on the part of Jeff Johns, Flashpoint Beyond, Tim Sheridan, Jeremy Adams, Jim Lee, Marie Javins, all of them. Just terrible stuff. I told you a long time ago the Omniverse was Pandora's box and DC Comics were making an enormous mistake. I never thought it would get this bad. But I don't mind saying I told you so. I actually recorded this video when they announced the Omniverse. I said it was a terrible idea. I pointed out everything that could go wrong, and somehow it's all happened and more. There's also a link in the video description if you didn't see the bots.